All right, a video about learning to play Atlantic Chase. I've been through the rules. I've done a couple of I've done all the tutorials. I've tried a few scenarios, and I just wanted to try to make a video. Maybe it'll help someone out. It'll also help me out because in the one plan, repetition will help internalize the rules. Second, trying to explain the rules probably internalizes the rules if you're ever trying to teach anyone anything. And third, if anyone happens to watch this and catches a mistake, they can chime in the comments and we'll learn that way. So please, if you see a mistake, go ahead and let me know. Politely, please. I'm a gentle soul. Think of me as the Bob Ross of wargaming. So let's get some happy little battleships on the board and get started. Now, actually, that brings up a very good point. We're not going to put battleships on the board because this is a different game, a different kind of game. And the designer on Board Game Geek likes to drill this in the head, and I have to remind myself of this all the time. Because, you know, in every war game you played before, you'll have like, okay, there's my enemy there, here's my ship here. Ooh, I got 3 movement points. I'll go 1, 2, 3, and pew, 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 and go away from England, you German people, and try to sink it. And that's right. Deck guns in World War II went pew, pew, pew. Now you know. But that is not how this game works. This game actually works because this board, and in all board games, the board usually represents the battlefield. This does not represent the battlefield. This represents a map in some intelligence HQ's room, and he's just trying to gather all the intelligence, figure out where the fleets are with old information. In fact, he doesn't even really know where his own fleets are. He knows what they're kind of trying to do, but because everyone used limited radio contact and such, it was difficult to track, and that's what all those games about is, trying to track down these fleets. So let's start with the first tutorial, and let me get that set up for you like so. Okay, the first tutorial doesn't even have the Germans on it. This is just the British. And the premise of the tutorial is a hypothetical race between 2 ships. And what you see on the map here is the route of these ships. And these are task forces. This is one here, and this is one here. And what is a task force? A task force is basically a ship or a group of ships, collected to do a specific thing. And if I can move the camera down here, I might have to pull it out of the mouth, pardon me. Over here, we see the ship, the HMS Warspite, in the task force that is assigned to this solid brown colors. Over here is the next task force, with a brown one with a little stripe through it. And if I look over here, in this race, they've both been operating down here by Spain, one from Gibraltar. And the idea is they're going to have an informal race to Portsmouth up here. Let's see if we can get that on the map, like so. And you say, well, how's this a fair race? Look at this. This guy's got shorter length to go. Like, it's got 7. This one's got 8. He's got a wider circle to get. Well, if we take a look at the ships, we see that the Warspite, the one with the shorter route, is actually rated at a speed of slow, whereas the Hood is rated fast. Over here, we see that there's 4 different speeds here. Very slow, slow, medium, fast. And the whole purpose of this tutorial is to teach the so-called, air quotes, movement in this game. And once again, remember, this is intelligent. This is somebody, let's say they informally say, hey, I'll race you to Portsmouth. We'll see who gets there first. And we'll say the guy back at HQ's got his little map there, and he says, oh, I heard about this race. I'm going to put money on the Hood, and he's going to track the information that he gets as this race proceeds. And the whole purpose of this tutorial is to teach the idea of time lapse. And time lapse is the first component of movement in here, is one of the components of movement, along with this, which we call a trajectory. Going from here to here. And you'll ask, where's the ship in here? The guy in the intelligence headquarters doesn't actually know. He has to get updated information, and that information gets old over time, so he's tracking it, and he's just kind of pinning it along as it goes. So let me remount this. And I'll show you how it goes. First, the Warspite, which is this one here, is going to do a time lapse. And the time lapse happens whenever you pass. And when you pass, you give the initiative to the other player. And since in this tutorial, that's really the only option you can do. And so what'll happen is the Warspite will pass. Now what happens when he passes? He has to do a time lapse. That means he has to update the information on the board. And what it means is he's going to remove some of these trajectory segments. And in this case, because he's slow, and if you look at the chart here, he has to remove 2. So he says, I pass, and remove 2 like that. Now the Warspite, the hood goes, the HMS hood, this one, and he's fast. He's going to, well, the only option he has is to pass. So he's going to update his information, and fast actually removes 4 segments. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot a key thing here. Let's put them back here real quick. Every time initiative changes, you have to roll for the weather. Right now, the weather is good. And it's pretty steady. You can pretty steadily monitor the movement of these guys because the weather is good and they don't have to deal with waves and whatnot. And so when the initiative changes hands, we have to check the weather each time. So when it goes over to the hood, he rolls a dice. And on a 6, the weather changes to bad. And changes to 5, the weather is still good. So he passes, and he's going to remove his 4 here. And as you can see, because he's fast, he's already closer to Portsmouth. So he passes, and we're back to the Warspite. And of course, we have to check for the weather. In fact, the weather is the only thing that's going to give him a fighting chance to win. Weather does not change. It's only a 2. It only changes on a 6. So again, he removes 2. And it passes to the Warspite. We check for the weather. It doesn't change. And now he removes 4 trajectories again. Now here's where it gets interesting. The second he removes this trajectory, the last one in the line, it converts into a station. What we call a station, represented by that. Whoops, wrong guy. That one. Now the station means he's there. There's very little confusion left as to where he is. Like here, over here, we're still not sure. Is he here? Is he here? Is he here? Here, we know he's here. He's in ports, and this is actually the end of the tutorial. Is that basically the Warspite won? The only way that actually, and when you look at the various speeds, the only way the hood could have won is if the weather was bad. Because when the weather is bad, you have to roll a dice to see how many of these segments are removed. And so if the hood rolled a 1 and the Warspite rolled a 6, you could see that the slower ship could have made it to port faster. They navigate in the weather better or something like that. That is the basic building block of that. I realize that wasn't the most interesting thing in the world to see, but it actually gives you the basics of how so-called movement works in this game, which means we'll just go ahead to the second tutorial. And the second tutorial is going to teach us how do we make these trajectories? How do we make these long lines for moving? And give me just a second here. Okay, here's our second scenario. And whereas the first one we had just the British, in this one we have just the Germans. And the premise of this one is we have a task force over here and a task force here. Remember, a task force can be either a trajectory or a station, just this little cylinder here. And let me show you these task forces. Let me pull this out of here. I accidentally hit the kill switch there. Sorry about that. I'll have to splice these two videos together. Here's the task forces here. We have one in this task force, the solid one, and it's just called Tanker. But actually in this scenario, this is representing the Altmark, and that has a historical significance you can look up. And I'm not going to try to pronounce this. Graf Spee? I'm not sure. Anyway, a pocket battleship. And let me put my back on the mount without turning it off this time. And the idea is this ship wants to do some patrols in the South Atlantic. And to do that, it needs to get over to this RV or rendezvous point and link up with the tanker, get refueled, and then it can head on down to South America. So, how are we going to do this? Well, what the task force here is going to do, and that's how it has you start, is going to make a trajectory. It's going to use a trajectory action. And with a trajectory action, you're basically going to draw a line like we have here with this. And let me get my sticks out. Let me go ahead and pause a little. So I declared a trajectory action for this station here. Now when you go into a trajectory, you stop being a station and you start becoming a line. And you can just make the line. There's a limit. Trajectories can be maximum of 15 segments long. So we go up like this. Hang on. So now you may be asking yourself, why am I going this way when I could just go this way? Well, when you start actually playing the real game, as it were, you're going to find you want to avoid things like enemy air bases and enemy other stations that are probably going to be around here, because it makes them a lot easier to attack you. And so in this case, I'm going to play it as if we're trying to avoid being found. And so we're going to take the long way. And we can go here, because these air base, you'll see these little air bases here. They got a range of 2 hexes. 1, 2, 1, 2. In fact, I wonder if I should go all the way up here. The modifier is a little less for the air bases the further out you get. When they're right on it, they get they get very strong modifiers, but when they're out, it's less. So we're going along like this. Now, the thing about trajectories we have to make sure is it has to be one line. It can't be forking out like, okay, well, here's one, and then it's breaking off here. And no, you can't do that. And the other thing, there can't be any holes like that. Now, you'll see that the enemy is able to make a hole, but when it does, it has to like get rid of all the trajectories on one side or the other. And that's the other thing I want to show you here with the time lapse, which I didn't cover before. Let me first get. Am I gonna make it? I have 15. I'm gonna stretch the 15 limit. I think I got plenty. Make a nice little line. Make it neat. And one more. Zoink. There. That is a trajectory, this course, to get to this rendezvous point. Now, what happens now is basically we're going to time lapse. He has the initiative. The weather is good. And so he's going to declare a pass. And like we said in our pass, the ship is medium speed. is that chart? No, the chart's down here. You can't really see it, but I can tell you that when you do time lapse with a medium speed ship, you remove 3 segments. 1, 2, 3. Now, the thing I didn't say before about trajectories, whenever you're doing a time lapse and you have to remove, you can actually remove them from either end. So for instance, I could go 1 and remove 2 from over here, or I could remove 2 from here and 1 from here, or I could remove 3 from here. But obviously we want to turn into a station over here, so we're going to remove the ones back here. 1, 2, 3 gone. I pass to the tanker, and every time we pass, we do a weather check. So we're going to roll the dice. 6 changes it. Nope, there's no change. The tanker is very slow, and when it's very slow, it's only 2 segments like slow. It's the same as slow, by the way. And he's just going to remove those 2. And he passes to the Graf Spee. And he's going to do a time lapse. First, he has to check the weather. It's still good. And he's going to remove 3. And it passes to the tanker again. Weather stays good. 2. Weather check for him. Stays the same. 2, 3. Passes the tanker. Check the weather. Not just going to matter that much, but it's still good. And he removes his 2. Now, of course, like I said before, when you remove the last segment in a trajectory, you turn into a station. We are converted to a station. We know our tanker has made it to the rendezvous point. Passes back to the pocket battleship. 1, 2, 3. Oops, I put this in wrong. I'll fix it later. Passes back to him. Now, he's going to pass, but since he doesn't have any segments, he's not going to remove anything. Now, he could, if he wanted to, make another trajectory. The thing about trajectory actions is you can do as many as you want. And you don't stop until you pass. So you can make lines all over the place if you want. And the other guy just has to sit there and wait his turn. Unless there's some things that can happen that can change that. But mostly, for the most part, trajectories, you can make as many as you want. And I forgot if we're supposed to check the weather or not. And it doesn't matter. 2, 3. And like we said, we removed the last one. And now we're converted to a station. And that is the end of the scenario, because both task forces are at the destination, rendezvous destination. That means it's going to be fueled. He's going to go off, and that is the end of the scenario. Again, not all that interesting to look at. It gets a lot wilder as we add more and more elements. And so for the next video, we're going to look at things like intel, and when you actually run into the enemy, and it makes the trajectories a little more interesting. And so I hope this is, I've been riffing here. I'm kind of improvising this whole thing here. If there's any confusion about it, please leave a comment or something like that, and I can explain more what's going on. But I'll see you next time in the next video. Thank you.